Captain Alex Carter's boots thudded softly against the cold, metallic floor of the space station as he wandered through the bustling market. Station, an ancient structure that had seen countless travelers over the centuries, was filled with strange and colorful characters. Ships of every shape and size docked here, and the air was thick with the scent of alien spices, rare ores, and the soft hum of machinery. Alex had been here many times before, but today, something felt different. He was in no hurry. He had just completed a mission, a simple resupply. Ronan was taking the opportunity to stretch his legs and explore the market. A few paces ahead, a group of Zephyr merchants haggled loudly over some glowing crystals. A group of robotic traders stood nearby, their voices echoing in mechanical tones as they advertised their wares. Alex wasn't looking for anything in particular. He simply wanted to take in the sights and relax. However, it wasn't long before he noticed something, or rather, someone unusual. A woman, bent low over a stack of metal parts, caught his attention. She was different from the usual market-goers. Her clothing was simple, a threadbare cloak that barely kept her warm in the cold, artificial air of the station. Her skin was a pale shade of lavender, typical of the Zephyr, but it looked thin, almost sickly, as if she hadn't had enough to eat in days. Her large violet eyes darted nervously from side to side, constantly watching for something or someone. Alex's instincts immediately kicked in. He had seen desperation in many forms before, but the woman's was different. It wasn't just the physical signs of hunger and exhaustion. There was something about her eyes, something raw and pleading. She looked out of place, almost out of time, as if she didn't belong in the market at all. Without thinking, Alex approached her. She didn't seem to notice him at first, her attention focused on the pieces of scrap metal in front of her. But as Alex drew closer, she slowly looked up. For a moment, their gazes met. Her eyes widened in surprise, and Alex could see the hesitation in her expression. She was clearly not used to being looked at in such a direct way. Most people passed by her, not even sparing a glance. "Are you all right?" Alex asked, his voice steady and calm, though he could feel his heart beginning to race. Something about this woman intrigued him. The woman flinched as though his voice had startled her, as she took a step back, almost bumping into a nearby stall. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed her cloak tighter around herself, as though trying to hide from something or someone. "I'm fine," she said, her voice soft and almost fearful. The accent was strange, a lilting melody that Alex had never heard before, even though he had traveled to many worlds. "Just looking for some parts." Alex raised an eyebrow. There's no way she could be here to purchase anything. Not with the way she was dressed and the look in her eyes. She was barely holding herself together. "Are you sure?" Alex pressed. "You look like you could use some help." The woman hesitated, then glanced around nervously. Her shoulders seemed to slump in defeat, and for a moment, Alex thought she might turn and run. But then, as though making up her mind, she stepped closer to him, her eyes locking with his again. "I need your help," she said, her voice trembling now, but with a quiet urgency. "I need you to marry me." Alex blinked momentarily. Thrown off by the unexpected request, he had dealt with many strange situations in his time as a captain, but this one was particularly odd. "Marry her?" He didn't even know this woman's name. "Marry you?" he repeated, his voice filled with confusion. "Why would you want me to do that?" The woman took a deep breath, and Alex could see her struggle to collect her thoughts. She looked around again, as though expecting someone to appear from the shadows. There was fear in her eyes now, fear that seemed to pulse with every passing second. "Please," she said, almost pleading. I'm being hunted. My people are being hunted, and if I don't marry someone of your kind, someone from Earth, I'll be ... killed." Alex's brow furrowed. He had heard stories of the Zephyr and their peaceful nature, but he didn't understand why someone would want to marry him of all people, especially when he was just a simple captainhood. Seen far too much war in his lifetime. "Who's hunting you?" he asked, his voice low and serious now. The woman's desperation was palpable, and he couldn't help but feel drawn to her plight. She hesitated again, as though weighing the decision of whether or not to trust him. Finally, she spoke. "A warlord," she said softly. He's conquered my world and slaughtered my people, my family, ... Everyone I know is dead. Now he's after me. I was once a scientist for my people, and I hold knowledge he wants. Knowledge that could stop him, but only if I'm alive." Alex's heart tightened at the words. He had been a soldier long enough to know what it meant when someone like her was hunted by someone like that. The warlord no doubt wanted to use her knowledge for his own gain. "Why me?" Alex asked, his voice steady but filled with disbelief. "Why would you want to marry me?" The woman met his gaze, and for the first time, Alex saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "There's a law," she said, "an ancient law that exists between our kinds. A marriage between a human and a Zephyr grants protection under intergalactic treaties. It will shield me from the warlord's forces, and ... If you marry me, you'll be my protector." Alex considered her words carefully. A marriage between a human and a Zephyr was rare, and there were only a few instances where such unions were recognized by the Intergalactic Council. But the idea of getting involved in something so personal, so dangerous, was more than he had bargained for. Still, he couldn't ignore the pull he felt to help her. He had seen too many innocent people suffer in his life, and something about her vulnerability, her strength drew him in. "I don't know if this is the right thing to do," Alex said slowly, "but I can't just leave you here. I'll help you. But we'll need to get off this station before anyone notices us." The woman nodded eagerly, her eyes brightening with a mix of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "You don't know what this means to me." Alex glanced over his shoulder, noting the increasing presence of security officers moving through the crowd. It was only a matter of time before they came looking for her. "Let's go," he said, his voice firm now. "We're getting out of here." Without another word, they moved through the market, heading toward the docks where Alex's ship awaited. Alex had no idea what he was getting himself into, but one thing was certain: he wasn't about to turn his back on her now. Alex and Lyra moved quickly through the crowded market, blending in with the rush of merchants and travelers. Though Alex couldn't shake the sense of unease building in his gut, Lyra was close behind him, her hand gripping the edge of his sleeve, as if the slightest separation would put her in grave danger. Her violet eyes were wide, darting from side to side, scanning the crowd, always alert. It was clear that the threat she faced wasn't just a distant fear. It was very real. It's very close. They reached the docks in record time. Alex's ship, the Hercules, was parked among several others, its sleek, dark form standing out against the stark white and metallic ship surrounding it. The Hercules had been his home for years, his most trusted companion through countless missions. He had seen battles and survived impossible odds, but this was different. Lyra didn't speak, but her eyes locked on the ship as if it were the last safe place in the galaxy. As they approached the ramp, Alex turned to her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She only nodded, her lips pressed tightly together. The look on her face told him everything he needed to know. She was terrified, but she was also determined. The warlord had made her a target, and now her survival depended on an unthinkable alliance. Alex didn't fully understand the situation yet. He had heard stories about the Zephyr, their gentle nature, their technological advancements, and their peaceful ways. But now, the fact that a single individual was being hunted like this, it didn't sit right with him. Lyra stepped onto the ramp behind Alex, her footsteps light but hesitant. She lingered for a moment, glancing back at the station. It was clear that she was still waiting for something, maybe a shadow, maybe an enemy, but nothing happened. For now, they were safe. The ramp sealed behind them with a low hiss, and Alex made his way to the cockpit, Lyra following closely behind. He didn't speak as he powered up the ship, his hands moving with practiced ease. He was no stranger to danger. But the look in Lyra's eyes told him this was a fight he didn't fully understand. Yet the engines hummed to life, and the ship slowly lifted off the ground, leaving the station behind. As they ascended into the vastness of space, Alex felt a shift in the air of heaviness that came with the realization that they were leaving behind the safety of the station, diving headfirst into the unknown. Once they were clear of the station, Alex glanced over at Lyra. She had taken a seat at the table across from him, her posture tense, her hands gripping the edge of the chair as if she needed something to hold on to. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Alex asked quietly, his gaze softening. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared out of the viewport, her violet eyes reflecting the stars outside. She seemed to be lost in thought, remembering things that had happened to her. Finally, she spoke, her voice a whisper in the silence of the ship. "My people were peaceful. We had no enemies, no reason to fear war." Her voice trembled slightly. Then the warlord came. His fleet arrived without warning. It destroyed everything. My family, my home. I watched it all burn. Alex's grip tightened on the controls. He knew what it felt like to lose everything. His own past was a fractured memory of wars, battles, and survival. But hearing Lyra's story stirred something deeper inside him. "I'm sorry," he said, though the words felt too small to carry any real weight. She nodded, but her face remained set in a grim expression. "It's not just the destruction, it's the way he does it. He doesn't want to conquer us, he wants to erase us, my people. Out our knowledge. He believes that if he wipes us out, he can rule the galaxy without opposition. But I'm the last one with the knowledge to stop him." Alex leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath. "And that's why you want me to marry you?" Lyra turned to him, her eyes flashing with a mixture of desperation and hope. "Yes, the law of my people and your people. A marriage between a Zephyra and a human creates a bond that is recognized by the Intergalactic Council. It provides protection that I desperately need." Alex sat up straighter, his mind spinning. He had heard of the law, the rare sacred bond between humans and Zephyra, often formed in times of great need. But the idea that someone would marry out of pure survival, not love, was foreign to him. "You're asking me to marry you, ... Not because of love," he said slowly, his eyes narrowing as he tried to piece it all together. Lyra met his gaze, her expression hardening with resolve. "No, not love. I need protection. If I don't marry someone of your kind, the warlord will find me. He'll kill me. He'll take the knowledge I have and use it to wipe out the last of my people. But if I marry you, if you agree to this, I will have the protection of your people, and I can finally stop him." There it was. The truth. Alex understood it now. She wasn't asking for something as simple as a rescue. She was asking for a chance at survival, a chance to stop the galaxy from falling into the hands of a madman. Alex's heart raced. This was a heavy burden she was placing on him, one that no one could prepare for. He had never considered marriage, let alone marriage to an alien woman he had just met. But the stakes were higher now. This wasn't just about him. It was about a woman fighting for her people's survival. "So, if I marry you, it's not just a contract," Alex said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "It's a legal bond that will protect you, but it'll also make me a target." Lyra nodded, her face pale, but her eyes resolute. "Yes, the warlord will stop at nothing to hunt me down. But if you're my husband, the council's law says that no one can harm us. We'll have their protection." Alex stood up and moved toward the viewport, looking out at the endless stretch of stars. He had faced countless dangers in his time as a captain, but this felt different. A marriage? A bond so deep, so sacred, forged in the heat of survival? "Didn't sign up for this," he muttered to himself. But as he looked back at Lyra, her fragile form hunched in the chair, his heart softened. She wasn't just some stranger asking for help. She was someone who had seen everything she loved torn apart, and now she was clinging to him, not because she thought he was the answer, but because he was the only option she had left. Alex turned back to her, his decision weighing on him like 1,000 tons of metal. "I don't know if I can do this, but I'm not going to let you face this alone." Lyra's eyes flickered with a glimmer of hope, but she didn't smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "We'll figure this out together," Alex said, though he wasn't sure how. But for the first time since meeting her, he felt a stirring of resolve deep within him. He would protect her, whatever it took. The Hercules glided through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek body cutting through the darkness as if it had always belonged there. Inside, Alex sat in the cockpit, his hands resting lightly on the controls. The hum of the engines was a constant presence, a reminder of the ship's power. But it couldn't drown out the storm of thoughts raging in his mind. Lyra sat behind him, her eyes lost in the stars outside the viewport. Her quiet, almost eerie calmness only added to the tension in the air. She had been silent for hours, lost in her thoughts, only speaking when necessary. Alex, too, kept to himself, uncertain about the path they were about to walk down. He hadn't expected this when he agreed to help Lyra. He thought it would be simpler, quick rescue, a temporary partnership. But now, the weight of her words, of what she had asked him to do, was sinking in. Marriage, he wasn't sure he could even imagine. The idea of marrying someone for protection, someone he barely knew, felt like a distant concept, strange law from another time, but the stakes were clear. They didn't go through with it. Lyra's life, along with the fate of her people, was at risk. She wasn't just asking for a favor. She was asking for survival. As they approached the edge of the galaxy, where the resistance forces were said to be hiding, Alex finally spoke, breaking the long silence. "You mentioned something." "Earlier," he began, his voice low, "about a law between humans and Zephyra, something about marriage giving protection." Lyra turned toward him, her eyes reflecting the stars. "Yes," she said softly. "It's an ancient law.
Ow.
The Intergalactic Council recognizes it. A marriage between a human and a Zephyra is rare, but when it happens, it creates a bond that no one can break. Not even the warlord." Alex leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. "So, if we get married, this bond will protect us from him?" She nodded, her gaze steady. "It's more than just a legal agreement. It's a binding contract. One that cannot be undone. The Council enforces it, and no one can interfere. The warlord's forces would be unable to touch us. He would be forced to leave me alone." Alex's mind raced. He had known the Council had laws to maintain peace across the galaxy, but he had never heard of anything like this. A marriage between two very different beings, recognized as a binding contract by the highest authorities in the galaxy. It was unprecedented. "But why you?" Alex asked, his voice full of curiosity and confusion. "Why would the warlord want to kill you so badly? You said you were a scientist? What kind of knowledge do you have?" Lyra hesitated, her eyes clouding. With something deep, something painful. She looked away, staring out at the stars again, as if the answer to his question was hidden in the void outside. "I didn't just work as a scientist," she said slowly. "I was part of the Zephyr High Command. I worked on weapons technology. Research that could have changed the balance of power in the galaxy. But when the warlord attacked, he didn't just want to destroy my people. He wanted what I knew, what I had discovered." Alex frowned, his thoughts shifting. "Weapons technology? What kind of weapons?" Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "Not just weapons. Something far more dangerous. A way to harness energy from the core of a planet, enough power to destroy entire star systems. I was close to perfecting the process when he came. My research could have stopped him, but now, it's all in my head, and he wants it." Alex's heart sank. The weight of her words hit him harder than any enemy he had ever faced. A weapon that could destroy entire star systems. That kind of power in the wrong hands could be catastrophic. "So, if you don't marry me, if we don't get this protection," Alex began, his voice steady, "then the warlord could find you, take your knowledge and use it to destroy everything." Lyra nodded. Yes, he would wipe out every planet he could. Every resistance that stood in his way, until there was nothing left but his rule. The room seemed to grow colder as the full extent of the danger sank in. Alex was no stranger to high stakes situations, but this was different. This wasn't just a battle for territory or resources. It was a fight for the very future of the galaxy. The warlord wasn't just a conqueror. He was a madman who wanted to reshape the universe in his own twisted image. We need to get to the resistance, Alex said, his voice firm now. The sooner we can join them, the sooner we can figure out how to stop this. Lyra nodded again, her face a mixture of relief and fear. I've been in contact with them, she said. They've been hiding in a remote sector, gathering what few resources they have left. But they're not strong enough to fight the warlord on their own. Not without the information I have. Alex glanced at her, then back at the controls. He could sense the urgency in her words. Time was running out. But he also knew that they were walking a fine line between survival and disaster. The marriage, though, it would give them legal protection wasn't just a formality. It would tie them together in ways that neither of them could predict. They would become targets for both the warlord and anyone who wanted to exploit their connection. He couldn't back down now. Not after hearing her story, not after seeing the fear in her eyes. He had no idea what the future held, but he would face it with her. Together. How long until we reach the resistance? He asked, his fingers moving over the controls as he adjusted their course. It will take us another 3 days to reach the sector, Lyra replied, her voice a little more relaxed now. We'll need to stay off the major trade routes, though. The warlord's scouts are everywhere. Alex nodded. He was used to flying under the radar. Staying off the main routes was second nature to him. The Hercules was built for stealth, designed for missions exactly like this one. He could handle it, but what he wasn't sure he could handle was the marriage. He had never imagined himself in a situation like this. It was one thing to be a protector. It was another to be forced into a bond that meant everything for someone else's survival. Lyra, Alex began, his voice tentative. I still don't understand everything about this. I don't understand the law or what's at stake. But if we do this, if I agree to marry you, it's not just a way to protect you, is it? It's a bond, something that will change both of our lives forever. Lyra turned to face him, her eyes meeting his for the first time in what felt like hours. Yes, she said softly, her voice steady now. It's a bond, a real one. And once we're married, we'll be connected. We'll have each other's backs no matter what. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about fighting for something greater. Alex took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling on his chest. He hadn't signed up for this, but there was no turning back now. The galaxy was counting on them. So was she. All right, he said finally, his voice filled with determination. We'll do this. We'll get to the resistance, and we'll stop the warlord. Together. Lyra's face softened, a faint, grateful smile flickering on her lips. Thank you, Alex. I won't let you down. Alex nodded, his eyes locked on the stars outside. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: their fight had only just begun. The stars outside the Hercules glistened in the vastness of space, a blanket of distant light stretching endlessly. Alex sat in the cockpit, his fingers hovering over the controls as his thoughts wandered. The ship had been flying for hours, and the tension between him and Lyra seemed to hang in the air like a thick fog, despite their agreement to marry. Things were not simple. Alex still didn't know everything about the bond that Lyra had mentioned. He didn't understand how it worked. The whole concept of being legally bound to someone, especially someone he had just met, was strange. And every time he thought about it, his mind felt heavy. Yet he couldn't deny the danger that was closing in on them. The warlord was still out there, his forces spread across the galaxy, hunting down any remaining resistance. Lyra's knowledge could stop him, but she had to live long enough to share it. Alex couldn't let that happen, not after everything she had shared with him. Lyra entered the cockpit quietly, her footsteps light but purposeful. She stood behind him for a moment, just staring at the stars through the viewport. Alex noticed she wasn't looking for beauty, though. She was looking for threats. We should be arriving in a few hours, she said, her voice low. Ow. Once. We're close to the resistance. We need to lay low. The warlord's ships might be scanning the area for us. Alex didn't respond immediately, his mind still preoccupied with the weight of their decision. He had agreed to marry her, to keep her safe. But now, the closer they got to the resistance, the more questions kept popping up in his head. Would the marriage really protect them? Would the council's law be enough to keep them safe? Do you trust them? Alex asked suddenly, glancing over at her. He wasn't sure why he'd asked it, but the question had been lingering in his mind. Lyra's gaze didn't falter. The resistance, she asked, her voice steady. I trust them as much as I can. They're the only ones who have been fighting. Back against the warlord, they know how dangerous he is and they're willing to fight until the end. Alex nodded, but something about her response didn't sit right. She wasn't fully convinced. He could see it in her eyes. She was afraid. Of the warlord, yes. But there was something else, something she wasn't telling him. Before he could ask her more, the communication system pinged. Alex's hand instinctively moved to the console, his heart rate quickening. Incoming transmission, the system announced. Lyra tensed up, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Alex. It's them, she said quietly, her voice filled with dread. Alex didn't hesitate. He punched in the access codes to accept the transmission, and within seconds, a face appeared on the screen. It was a woman, with sharp features and cold eyes. Her face was framed by short black hair, and her uniform looked military, with the insignia of the warlord's fleet clearly visible. Lyra, the woman said, her voice like ice. I know you can hear me. You can run, but you can't hide. We have you now. Lyra's face drained of color, and Alex saw her grip tighten on the edge of the console. This wasn't just some random communication. This was the warlord's personal commander, someone who had been tracking her for a long time. We've been looking for you, the woman continued, a twisted smile forming on her lips. You're a valuable asset, Lyra. But I think it's time to bring you back. You've caused too much trouble. Alex's mind raced. Oh, this was bad. Very bad. The warlord had found them, and now they were trapped. He glanced at Lyra, and she looked back at him, her face filled with both fear and determination. Tell me where you are, Lyra, the woman on the screen demanded. We'll make it easy for you. No more running, no more hiding. We'll take you in, and the information you have will be ours. Lyra swallowed hard but kept her gaze steady. I'm not coming back to you, she said, her voice trembling only slightly. I won't help you destroy my people. The woman's smile faltered for a moment, then she leaned in closer to the screen. Oh, Lyra, she said, her voice dripping with menace. It's not about what you want anymore. This is bigger than you. You'll come back and you'll give us what we need, whether you want to or not. The transmission ended abruptly, the screen going dark. The room was silent, the tension palpable. Alex stood up from his seat, walking toward Lyra. We need to act fast, he said, his voice firm. The warlord's forces are closing in. We're not going to make it to the resistance at this rate. Eyes were still locked on the screen, her expression unreadable. We can't fight them off alone, she murmured. But if I tell you everything, if I share what I know, we might have a chance to stop them. Alex's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? Lyra turned to face him, her eyes full of regret. The weapon the warlord wants, it's not just any weapon. It's a device that can siphon the energy from a planet's core. If it works, he can destroy entire worlds. Once he gets the full formula, nothing will be able to stop him. Alex felt the blood drain from his face. He had known the weapon was dangerous, but hearing the details sent a chill down his spine. This wasn't just a galactic war, it was the potential for complete annihilation. How do we stop it? Alex asked urgently, moving closer to her. Lyra hesitated, as if she was struggling with a decision. The only way to stop the warlord is to destroy the device, but there's a catch. The device is linked to my DNA. It requires my blood to activate it. Without me, it's useless. Alex blinked, processing her words. Wait, you're telling me that the warlord has been hunting you all this time? Because you're the key to his weapon? Lyra nodded. Yes, he believes that once he has me, he can use my blood to activate the device and complete the weapon. But he's wrong. I can stop it. I just need to get to the core system where it's being kept. Alex was quiet for a moment, letting the gravity of her words settle. And you think the resistance can help us destroy it? I don't know, Lyra admitted. It's our only chance. We have to get there before the warlord does. If we don't, He'll use the device to wipe out entire star systems. Alex took a deep breath. The situation was worse than he had ever imagined, and now there was no time to waste. He had to get Lyra to the Resistance and fast. Going to need more than just the two of us to stop him, Alex said, his voice hardening with resolve. We'll get to the Resistance, and we'll warn them. We'll do whatever it takes to stop the warlord. I promised you we'd do this together. And I meant it. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes shining with both fear and hope. I trust you, Alex, she said softly. But I don't know if we can make it. You've got me, Alex replied firmly. And I'm not backing down now. The stars outside the ship seemed to blur as the Hercules shot forward, its engines roaring to life. The warlord's forces were closing in, but Alex was determined. He would protect Lyra, and together they would stop the destruction that threatened the galaxy. The Hercules hummed through space like a beast on the hunt, its engines thrumming with energy as it pushed toward the final destination. The stars outside flickered like scattered diamonds, but Alex barely noticed them. His mind was focused on what lay ahead, what they were racing toward. Lyra had told him everything, the weapon, the warlord's plans. And now they were heading straight into enemy territory. The tension in the cockpit was suffocating. Lyra sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes distant, lost in thought. For the first time since they had started this journey together, Alex saw the fear in her eyes. It was something he had tried to ignore, something he had hoped he could shield her from. But now it was clear that fear was not just about the warlord. It was about the future, her future, their future. Would they make it out alive? Would they stop the warlord's deadly weapon before it was too late? You're quiet, Alex said, glancing over at her. Lyra looked at him, her expression serious. I'm thinking about what comes next. He didn't respond right away. There was no point in trying to comfort her. He didn't have any answers. They had just a few hours before they reached the planet where the warlord's weapon was being held. And if they didn't act quickly, the device would be activated. Everything they had fought for would be lost. What do we do when we get there? Alex asked. How do we stop it? Lyra's gaze turned toward the console in front of them, her fingers brushing against the controls. The Resistance is waiting for us. They've been preparing for this day, for the moment when the warlord would finally make his move. We need to get in, disable the weapon, and destroy everything. Before he can use it? Alex's grip on the controls tightened. And if we fail, Lyra didn't answer right away. She only looked at him, her eyes full of sorrow. Then we all die. The truth hung heavy in the air, settling around them like an anchor. The stakes were impossibly high, but there was no turning back. Not now. The planet they were heading toward loomed on the view screen, its surface marked by a thin atmospheric veil. The Resistance base was hidden deep beneath the planet's surface, shielded from the warlord's eyes, but even that wouldn't be enough if they couldn't disable the weapon. Alex set the ship on autopilot, his mind running through the plan. They would land, link up with the Resistance, and then make their way to the facility where the device was stored. They had to be fast. The warlord's forces were already closing in. There was no time to waste. The ship descended through the atmosphere, the turbulence shaking the Hercules as it entered the planet's lower atmosphere. The Resistance's coordinates were locked in, and Alex guided the ship with precision, trying to avoid any trace of detection. The warlord had spies everywhere. They couldn't afford to be caught. After what felt like an eternity, the Hercules finally settled into a hidden cave on the planet's surface, concealed from prying eyes. The ship's landing gear touched the rocky floor, and Alex exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. We're here, he said, turning to Lyra. She nodded, her face pale but determined. Let's go. They quickly suited up, strapping on the tactical gear the Resistance had provided. Alex checked his weapon, a blaster he had never used before but hoped would do the job if it came to that. Lyra had insisted they didn't need heavy artillery. This mission had to be fast and quiet. The element of surprise was their best weapon. As they exited the ship, the cold air of the planet's surface hit them, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the ship's interior. The Resistance members, all wearing dark camouflage gear, were already waiting for them. Their leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Commander Rax, stepped forward as they approached. You made it, Rack said, his voice gruff but filled with a sense of relief. We were beginning to think we might have to go without you. Made it just in time, Alex said. We need to move quickly. The warlord's forces are close. Rax nodded. We've got everything in place. The facility where the weapon is stored is just a few miles from here, but it's heavily guarded. We'll need to get in, disable the security systems, and then destroy the weapon. The countdown has already started. Lyra's face tightened, her eyes filled with the weight of the responsibility. We don't have much time. We'll move fast, Rax said. Stay close, and don't let anyone see you. The group set out immediately, moving through the rocky terrain. The landscape was barren, marked only by jagged cliffs and sparse vegetation. Alex stayed at the rear, his senses on high alert. His training told him to expect the worst ambushes, traps, anything the warlord's forces could throw at them. They couldn't afford to be careless. After what seemed like hours, they reached the facility. It was a massive, underground complex, built into the side of a mountain. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their figures barely visible in the darkness. Lyra's knowledge of the place was crucial. They couldn't afford to make a wrong move. Here, Lyra whispered, pointing to a small ventilation shaft near the edge of the facility. We can enter through there. It'll take us directly to the control room. Rax motioned for the team to follow. Moved quickly, silently, slipping into the shaft one by one. The air inside was stale, but it was their only option. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, barely making a sound as they approached the control room. At the end of the shaft, they emerged into a dimly lit hallway. The door to the control room was just ahead, guarded by 2 soldiers. Alex motioned to the others, signaling for them to stay back. He and Lyra would take care of this. With practiced precision, they approached the guards. Alex took one out with a swift blow to the neck, while Lyra used a stun device to disable the other. They moved past them quickly, entering the control room. Inside, a bank of computers and monitors lit up the room, showing detailed plans for the weapon and its activation. This is it, Lyra said, her voice tight with urgency. She hurried to the main console and began typing furiously, her fingers flying over the keys as she searched for the shutdown sequence. Alex kept watch, his heart pounding. He knew the warlord's forces couldn't be far behind. They didn't have long. Finally, Lyra's screen flashed green. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. I've disabled the system. The countdown has stopped. Alex exhaled, feeling a surge of hope. But just as quickly, that hope was replaced by dread. A siren blared across the facility. Countdown had been interrupted. But now the entire base was on high alert. They know we're here, Rack shouted from the hallway. We need to move now. Without another word, they ran, making their way back toward the ventilation shaft. But as they neared the exit, they were met by a group of heavily armed soldiers. Alex's mind raced. They couldn't fight their way out, not with the limited time they had, but then, out of nowhere, the ground trembled beneath their feet. An explosion rocked the facility, sending debris flying in all directions. The resistance had set the charges. We're going to blow the facility, go, Rax shouted. Get out of here now. The group ran as the explosion echoed behind them, shaking the very ground they stood on. Alex's heart pounded as they sprinted toward the ship. Behind them, the base was erupting in flames, collapsing into itself as the Resistance's plan came to fruition. They reached the Hercules just as the final explosion went off, sending a shockwave through the air. The warlord's weapon was no more. As the team piled into the ship, Alex looked at Lyra, his chest heavy with relief. They had done it. The weapon was destroyed. The galaxy was safe for now. We did it, Alex said, his voice hoarse. Lyra turned to him, her face pale but filled with gratitude. You did it, she corrected. You saved us all. As the Hercules took off into space, Alex looked out at the stars, knowing that this battle was over. But the war against the warlord was far from finished. They had won this fight, but the war was just beginning.